Test. I don't have time for that.
Hey guys, this is Lewis. I just want to make sure my mic is on. I can hear you guys. I just heard something and I can see the video fine.
Hello,
Yes.
council member.
Hey, how's it going?
So whenever IT is ready, we can get started. Yes, we're good. All right, so good evening, everybody. Sorry for the delay. We're going to get started while Councilmember Dieguez makes his way over here. We are going to call this workshop to order. And I'm going to allow staff to begin their presentation. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I'll walk you through what we did. First of all, I want to couch some of what we're going to discuss tonight with some caveats. Number one is we are still waiting for several revenue estimates from the state of Florida. The state of Florida has not posted any. So usually there's a website that Melissa goes and checks it. And then sometimes there's one or two of the estimates. It's all on the same website, but you'll see the different lines. So far, there have been no estimates. So in here, when we go through this, you'll see some of these were easier to forecast based on historical trends and where things are going. Some of them are more difficult. So the ones that were more difficult, she posted it with zero change, no increase, no decrease. And those, so I say all of that to make it clear that we're going to go through. A lot of this is going to be related to it's going to be similar information to what you'll see in the item tomorrow night with the resolution to set the millage rate. And what I say all of that to tell you that this will change. Okay, so this is just the preliminary proposed budget. It's going to change once we start getting estimates. When we go to the workshop for all of the funds, there'll be more certainty, some of which may not be 100% certainty. For sure, obviously, by the time we get to the first budget hearing, all of these numbers will be 100% certain, right? So this is kind of just the initial, blush at the preliminary budget, and I'll walk you through some of the things. What we did, Melissa put together this outline, which is really an outline of tomorrow night's millage setting item. So I'll walk through here. It's similar to the outline that she prepared for you last year. So just in brief, under general revenues, ad valorem, as you saw, there was an increase in the tax base that resulted in a 9.3% ad valorem tax increase, and that represents $827,000. The property values, as you see, they're all there. The rollback rate would have generated $828,000 less if that were a consideration. It would generate $828,000 less than what's proposed here in this budget. We also have, as far as other significant revenue increases, we have the franchise fee. As you know, the franchise fee, there's a limit, right? There's a cap that only up to 1.275 million annually. Everything over that is earmarked for infrastructure. We're targeting 10,000 in revenues in surplus of the 1.275 million. Near the bottom of this first page is where some of the state revenues are shown for you. So you have the electric utility tax. That one, we're based on trends. We're forecasting an increase of $200,000. The water utility increase, we're forecasting based on historical trends of increase of $30,000. The half penny sales tax, based on trends, we're estimating $350,000 increase. The last two, number 6 and 7, there at the top of page 2, those are the two that we have not dared yet to kind of forecasted. They're more unpredictable. So those, we just left them at last year's number. Okay. So the under expenditures, some of the significant changes that we're proposing in the budget is some of you have spoken about a little bit with this. Some of you have not yet had the opportunity, but what we saw is similar to last year. where the CPI for Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach was somewhere between 10 and 11% for the time period. We ended up providing a COLA to our staff of 5%. And obviously, there's always that balancing act, right? So even though inflation is running at a certain percentage, based on budgetary constraints and all the demands that are on the council and the fiscal decisions that you have before you, sometimes we cannot make up for everything with regard to inflation. In this year's proposal, we are the current, even though there seems to be trends that show inflation is coming down, the latest number that we have, we do not have the number as of the end of June. It comes out, it'll probably be out like within a week or 10 days from now is when the Labor Department puts that number out. What we do have is as of the end of April, it's somewhere between 9 and 10%. So it's in the 9 point something percent. So what we have proposed in here in this budget, you're going to have contain a COLA of 5%, the same percentage that that this council approved last year. Some of the other changes here is that the FRS rate increased by about 150 basis points. Health insurance is something that we are forecasting a 17% increase, and it's also the same, more or less the same forecasted increase that we're predicting for liability insurance. Now, health insurance, the good thing about health insurance is that by the time you get your budget for consideration in September, you'll have a more definitive number on health insurance, because before, and I think it was a result of when the town who was under the county health insurance plan, when we left, or I think it was that they threw us out, the county asked us to get our own plan. It was in the middle of a year. So I think the last time up to now, all policies have started. The policy year has been starting like in November, December. It's an awkward time frame, because then when the council approves the budget in September, you don't have a definitive number. We're still basing on forecasts and predictions, right? Now, this year, we were able to work with Cigna and our broker to have the plan year start October 1. So now the number that you'll see when you have it before you for a legitimate vote in September, that number will be it will be a definitive number, and it won't be a forecast.
Can I ask a quick question on that? Are we considering high deductible plans as an alternative to the high cost for this upcoming?
Well, I'll look. We have not.
Okay.
We put this out for bid last year, I think it was, and we had United Health, and United Health was giving us a renewal rate that was exorbitant.
Yeah.
United Healthcare or Cigna came in and really significantly undercut. I don't know if I know you weren't on the council at that time yet, but the other members of the council, you'll remember that some of the early numbers were really high, and we were able to get that. But it happened after the budget year started because we weren't able to get it. So this time, Cigna gave us almost like a partial year plan. Instead of it being a full 12 months, they gave us a plan year that was, I think, either 9 or 10 months. That allowed us now to come to the October 1 start date. So even though that you're seeing a 17% increase, it's forecasted. It may be different, right?
Sure.
That's another one of these numbers that we're just dealing with forecast. When you'll see it in September, it'll be a definitive number, and then we can talk about what other options are available to us.
If you would just maybe keep in mind that if maybe ask them to provide an option with a health savings account to go along with the high deductible plan, a health savings account, so the staff can actually, it's a account that you open up, they give you money,
Yeah.
pay for deductibles, you know about that, but
Yeah.
sometimes it helps with that cost. It could be an option if it's going to go up 17%. That might
Okay.
be an option to save
Yeah,
a little
I'll
money.
talk to Cynthia's our point
Sure.
of contact for our insurance broker, and have her talk to the broker and see if that means going back out to bid or it's something that we can just incorporate into this plan. Well, the liability insurance, actually, I misspoke. The liability insurance is actually only forecasted to be an 8% increase, which is good. If you go down on the next page, you'll see some of the changes that are either required by, for instance, the charter requires some things to be automatically indexed, like some of the mayor's salary. It's automatically stipulated in the charter. It has an index according to the CPI. So if you going down here, we actually have the mayor's office has an increase of $37,000 based on some of those things. The town clerk has an overall decrease of $15,000. Administration overall, based on some of the things that we've just gone over, has an overall increase of $381,000. And remember, what we're going over tonight is only general fund. All right. So some areas of our administration, some areas of our expenses are funded with other funds, right? For instance, there's a significant portion of our operations that are funded by the building fund. Everything that's in the building fund, in the building department, other than code enforcement, is funded through the building fund, so that we're not even discussing that tonight. Also, there's certain things that are funded through the stormwater fund, like a lot of our stormwater operations, and some salaries are paid through that. Some things are paid from the PTP fund, some things dealing with transit and transportation. So those tonight, all we're talking about are the things that are funded through the general fund. Okay. As we go down here, we also see IT has a moderate increase of $23,000. Administrative transfers are minus $37,000, and that's primarily attributed to capital projects. Last year, we funded some things for future parks and things from the general fund and special revenue fund. From the gas tax fund, speed humps is something that we funded last year, so now that wouldn't be in this new budget. So non-departmental is an overall decrease. We're increasing for some of the things that we've been directed to. The first item is something that you're going to see at tomorrow night's meeting. It's an item the mayor is going to bring before you. I have those who I've had the opportunity to brief already for tomorrow night's meeting. I spoke to them about, which is a grant program that FIU has. FIU has a grant program that they approach the town foundation. The town foundation is a not-for-profit foundation that we have in the town that is funded with the proceeds from the food and wine. So the proceeds from the food and wine goes into the foundation, and we normally every year we award grants to enhance education in town. So the kids and teachers in the different schools in the town have the opportunity to present projects. The foundation board then votes on it and awards these grants. The FIU has this program that is for first-time college students who qualify for Pell Grant, right? So there's the double whammy, right? So it's kids who are going to the first time for their family, right? In their family, the first kid in the family who has the opportunity to go to college, and then they also have to have a financial qualifier, which is they qualify for Pell Grant. And FIU handles the identification of who these kids are. I think last year's number, because every year it changes based on the FIU's enrollment. Last year's number was, I think, 70 or 80 kids. So I'm making a short story long here. So what that program is about is they approached us. The foundation has limited funds because we already have an opportunity to, in a program to disperse the money. But we did say that the foundation can match something. And I think that the ask tomorrow night that you'll see from the mayor is going to be for the town to consider a $20,000 general fund allocation to this program. The foundation, even though we haven't taken a final vote, there was sentiment on the foundation board that we would match that with $5,000 from the foundation. So now you have $25,000. FIU has already secured a match for those $25,000, a 2-to-1 match. So there's a corporation that is willing to do it, and it's only for kids that live in the town boundaries, the town of Miami Lakes. So if the town can come up with those $25,000, This company would match it with 50,000 and we'd have 75,000 to afford. And I think that the number is, I think it's 2,000 per student that qualifies. And that's going to be the program. So I'll get ahead of the mayor and I apologize to him in advance for doing that. But I want to try and explain what the item is here on your agenda. The item that has now happened 2 years in a row, the senior and disability relief programs, we're funding it. The last 2 times we funded it in different ways through we did it the last 2 times through the carry forward. There's been a sentiment on the council to continue this program, so we're building it into the budget upfront. So we have the reserve for committee donations. That's so to have it there in case they get donations throughout the year so they can draw on it. And then obviously the litigation reserves, that's basically a number that's already there in this budget that we just push into the new year. All right. So the town attorney, there's no change there. Planning and zoning, a moderate change of $12,000. Code compliance, $9,000. There's some bond payments like the CUNIP. They have a very minor $300 increase. Police is one that's, and we kind of expected this. Police, the overall increase is $655,000. So that's there. We get those numbers from the Miami-Dade Police Department. So they're the ones who provide us and say, based on, because it depends, and this is something that not everybody may be aware of. We don't have a negotiated price for the police department. We pay what it costs, right? So it depends on the composition of the officers. We pay for Officer John Doe, and Officer John Doe, if he's a rookie and has a low end pay, that's what we pay. If we have Officer Mary Smith, who happens to be a 25-year veteran and has a higher pay scale, then we pay Officer Mary Smith pay. So every year is a little different based on some of the ebbs and flows. We have a lot of our officers that are consistent. They continue with the department and in staying in the town, but we do have some people get promoted, request a transfer for career development. So there's a lot of dynamics that happen with the staffing, and that's why this number changes somewhat. We have school crossing guards. School crossing guards is something that we have taken the initiative to start little by little. We have a number that we have to reach by law within by a certain time frame. I think the year is by the either 24 or 25, which is to get them to a certain hourly rate. So we're taking the initiative and increasing them so that in the final year it's not a big hit. Right. So we're trying to do it incrementally and stair step it up to get to that statutorily required hourly rate. Public Works and Green Space, we have right-of-way electricity that increased, water utilities that increased, contract repair and maintenance. There was a contract that was bid out because it had expired, and that was a significant increase in our Public Works and Green Space budget. And
can I ask you a quick question on that?
absolutely.
That contract was awarded to whom? To what company?
That was SFM? Yeah.
The repairs and maintenance for green space?
Yeah. That's actually, we just
Juniper
awarded it,
and SFM. And those are the same vendors that we had before?
not Juniper.
And when we're seeing these bids go out, how many people are,
Yeah, go ahead, come up here. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so that Councilmember Collazo can hear you.
Yeah, so it's typically 3 to 4 different vendors will come out and provide bids for,
But it's typically the same ones.
typically, yes.
Is it because of constraints that we have in place? Insurance constraints or requirements that we have in place that we always see the same people bidding and we don't, like, we can't pull people in from outside of that pool?
I don't think so. A lot of these contracts are quite similar. We do have a performance-based contract, which is a little different. But in the end, you still see a good amount, especially on Demand Star and some of our public purchase sites, a lot of downloads. So the only way to really find that out would be to have to ask through the procurement process if there's ask for any input as to why
Right, why it is that
certain
that
entities
other-
didn't bid.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to look into.
But
because
some of it is what you say, right? So we have expectations, right?
Mhm.
So we can hire, like my wife always used to say, a guy in a bucket, right? And then now that's our landscaping or our right of
Right, I
way.
just realized that a lot of the contracts, even for different services, keep going to the same companies all the time. So I'm curious as to why other companies aren't bidding. I mean, there's even companies that work in other municipalities that don't necessarily bid for some of our contracts. So I'd like to I understand if we have, maybe our requirements are too high or.
No, I believe that we're comparable to other local governments in South Florida. And there's maybe about half a dozen of the big guys, right? The SFM, Juniper, Brightview, some of these that are the big guys that can not only provide a good product, they can be relied upon. They don't, they don't disappear overnight. They have the proper liability insurance. They do all of the things that we require. And there's probably about half a dozen of the big guys. And those are the ones that continuously bid for it. A company like SFM is unique, right? Because SFM is very diversified. They do landscape things, they do the security guard things. So they're different from some of the other ones. That may be why you hear their name coming up more often, because they do things that not some of the other ones have a niche and they do only this. But SFM is very diversified and they bid on a lot of diverse contracts in the town. But they all go through that competitive process. In advance of awarding the bid, we always have an evaluation sheet. Price is not always the only thing. We just make sure that they can perform. They get evaluated by a committee. The committee then brings and has to justify the awarding of the grant to me. I approve it, and that's when it comes before you for your consideration to award it at a council meeting, because these are high dollar value
No,
contracts.
they are. And
Right.
every time that we renew them, they're higher and higher. So I was just wondering if we could possibly try to find a way to encourage other companies to also come in and bid.
And a lot of these companies, they rely on minimum wage labor, right?
Mhm.
And that was some of the problem that we saw near the tail end of COVID, that we were having them trying to comply and trying to perform. People were disappearing because it was difficult for them to retain employees. In addition, what I just mentioned a moment ago about with the school crossing guards is they are also having to comply with some of the statutory requirements of increasing hourly rates up to a certain level by a certain date.
Mhm.
So that's really why we've seen probably an extraordinarily high rate of increase with some of these contracts that rely on that type of labor pool.
Right.
Different than other contracts, right?
No, I understand, but I'd still like to know in the bidding process, perhaps find out some of the people that are downloading these applications and not actually filling them out or submitting them, maybe reaching out and finding out, what is it that kept you from bidding, just for us to know. Otherwise, we're
Yeah.
going to be stuck with the same pool of 4 vendors that we can't ever get out of. And then that's not really a competitive process, because it goes out for a competitive bid, but it's not really competitive because you're pulling from the same people always.
Understood.
Thank you.
So some of the Parks and Recreation has an overall increase of 141. Some of that deals with some of the changes to the salary and benefits. Some of that has to do
I'm
with.
sorry, Mr. Manager, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Could we go back up to, I see decrease in tree trimming and tree removal. Could you kind of go over why that there's a decrease there
Well,
in the public works and green spaces?
Yeah, there's $3,600 decrease in tree trimming.
I think it's because those marginal changes, Melissa, that was from amended budgets, right?
To utilize FPL franchise fee surplus.
That's for my sidewalks.
Yes.
Don't take it for the trees.
And remember that during the carry forward amendment, the council approved allocations to some of these areas, which were, so we'd have to look, these numbers are based on amended or last year's adopted budget? Okay,
So they've been supplemented by other funding.
yeah,
And-
by the FP&L surplus
Yeah,
fund,
okay.
which last year was the very first year that that we had that.
So this year we have an FPNL, we're gonna have, we have 1.275,
Right, that's the amount that's in the ordinance that the council.
right? But we don't, and the surplus is gonna be,
hundred and
says-
thirty-five.
275 million.
So 1.275 is,
is the cutoff.
That,
and then anything in excess of that would be able to be utilized
Right,
for
so,
infrastructure projects.
right, so that's the basic franchise fee that we can use for the general fund is 1.275, and then anything in excess, but here where it says FPL franchise fee surplus,
So last year, we budgeted 125 in addition, which is what would be utilized for infrastructure projects. This year, we're increasing that by 10, so it would be 135,000 that would be allocated to different infrastructure items. So in the revenue section, you'll see an increase of 10,000. It's just 10,000 to the 125 for a total of 135.
okay,
Got
so
it.
then this year we're anticipating 1.285. Is that,
no,
and then we're gonna have a $10,000 surplus?
no, there was
Because the-
100 and, how much last year? 125
125 is what we budgeted. We received
surplus.
surplus. What
Mhm.
we received, give me a second. Yeah. What we received last year was 149,664
In surplus.
in surplus.
So the 1.275 is already there. It's for used for general operations.
So in the revenue, it offsets the 135 that I'm budgeting this year. It's allocated in the surplus line item and the revenue side, and then 135 in the surplus franchise fee expense side. So it's kind of a wash for right now because we don't know what we're going to receive. We anticipate that it'll probably be more than 125. So
Okay,
to
so
be
then that number's,
conservative, I did
that number's
135.
not reflected in this. It's
The-
not reflected in this report, in this overview that we're looking at.
The 135.
It's not reflected
No,
here.
the only
Nor,
thing,
nor what we're gonna be budgeting for this year.
so what's reflected in this is 1,000 because that's the only, this is just reflecting increases and decreases. So it's just an increase of 10,000, but it's reflected in the proposal for tomorrow under a contingency reserve in the franchise fee surplus sub fund.
Okay,
You follow me?
yes, yes.
So it'd be 135. Surplus will
Mhm.
be 135 this year.
That's what we're counting
Last
in our
year,
budget this
We
year. Okay.
budgeted 125. So the $10,000 more.
So just, and the reason why I was asking was because of what Councilmember Garcia is asking about the $36,000 for tree trimming. If our surplus this year is gonna be 135, then that's the surplus for
It-
infrastructure.
Potentially, it could be more.
Right, it
'cause-
could be, right, it could
'cause
be, it
this
could be
year we
140, it could
received-
be 150, but that's,
Mhm.
that's the number that we're gonna be looking at for everything, for sidewalks, for trees, for, it's not a lot of money. It doesn't really go a long way.
But remember, that's in excess of what's already going to be budgeted in, for
Correct.
example, in gas tax, what they have budgeted for sidewalks. That
Correct.
budget is not reflected here because this is only general fund. So anything, it would be in excess to what would be budgeted there.
Right,
We're treading very carefully and lightly with the FP&L surplus money because we're really, as conservative as we normally are with our estimates, we're being even so much more because we don't yet have a track record, right?
right,
And FP&L over the last year or two has gone through a series of rate changes, right? So we haven't really been able to have an accurate historical measurement for what those impacts are going to be. So we're not really, while we think we're going to have added revenue there, we don't want to really reflect it, too much of it, because of the fact that we want to wait to see what the experience is versus what we think is going to happen.
Mhm.
All right, as far as from the committees, I know that the committees, they had their workshop last week. They made their pitch for different items. What we put in here, because there was kind of some conversation here by the members of the council who were in attendance, we are reflecting no change in the committee's budgets. So that's something for you to consider. So they're getting in this budget, in this version, preliminary budget, they're getting the same amount as they were allocated this year. And that's it. The communications, community affairs, they have an increase, and that's also based on some of the changes that we're making with COLAs and FRS and healthcare and so forth.
I'm sorry to interrupt. When you say committees, budgets are staying flat, right?
Yes.
Does that mean that the BAB, you're recommending zero
At
budget
this
for the
point,
BAB?
what's in this proposal is even the blasting advisory would be zero. Zero because they didn't have a budget last year. Because it's based on last year's adopted budget, not, I know
Sure,
that
sure.
throughout the year, they had an allocation that you guys approved that increased their budget, but so we have the adopted budget, which is the budget that was adopted for October 1 of last year. And then throughout the year, but from the carry forward amendment or whatever, then there is an amended budget. And now, so their amended budget did have an allocation, but not their adopted budget from last year's process, the process where we're
Sure.
starting now.
Sure,
Does
and
that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. And tomorrow in the process, we can start giving our, because I honestly believe BAB should have a budget, but that's.
Yeah, and
that's in
listen-
In the next,
That could, I mean, that
yeah.
that
the next-
conversation could be had tonight
Sure.
too.
Yeah, the question tomorrow, we are required by law, obviously, this council is required by law to adopt a proposed
Sure.
millage rate, right? And that proposed millage rate has to be adopted by August the 4th. So tomorrow night is going to be your opportunity to set the
millage.
tentative millage. And they call it the tentative millage because what you're setting really is the cap, the ceiling.
Mhm.
So you're going to have other opportunities down the road at the budget hearings to modify that millage. And if that happens, then,
Yeah,
we'll
of
have to
course.
start, we'll handle that part of it.
Okay,
Right. Yeah, it can only be modified lower. Tomorrow you're setting the cap,
sure. No,
which
of
means
course,
it
yeah,
cannot be
no.
higher than that. Through the budget hearings, those two, the first and second reading, the opportunity will be there, but only to lower it, not to raise it
Okay,
higher.
well, I just want to put it out there that you guys know my support for the BAB, and
Yes.
I will be asking for a budget for them, just to let you guys know.
So that's the recap and the outline. Tomorrow, sometimes people make the conflate what really you're going to be looking at tomorrow. Tomorrow is really basically just setting the millage rate cap. We have to, by law, attach a balanced budget to it. But as I explained early on, the very first things that I said is that this is a preliminary budget. It is balanced. You have a balanced budget before you. It's based on several unknowns, which primarily are, things that are still to be determined, like the state revenues, et cetera. So tomorrow, even though there is a budget attached to it, you're not approving the budget tomorrow. It's a support document for you to set the millage rate, the cap, the ceiling for the millage rate. And that's the outline. So that's the recap. So we're obviously we've had some questions already as they came up, and we'll be more than happy to answer more if there are some. I know that this is all new information that's being put before you. We also, we can have one-on-one briefings with any one of you and me and the budget staff, and we'll be more than happy to have those, especially as this becomes, and this budget preparation, matures a little more, and we get more definitive answers and more definitive information from this, like the state and so forth. So
Before I forget, I wanted to, I'm looking here at Parks and Rec. There's an increase to the janitorial service contract for $102,000. We had the discussion about some of our events that we have to outsource some of the cleaning and some of the pickup because it's outside the scope of what our janitorial contracts are. So I wanted to bring it up before I forget. I'd like us, when we revisit these contracts, I'd like us to broaden the scope because I don't feel that we should be paying any additional companies to come in to pick up anything if we have staff at these facilities that are there full-time,
yeah, and
except for the 4th of July or something, something major like that. But for example, we had to pay SFM for 4 or 5 hours of cleanup after the health fair. because it was in the parking lot and because it was outside the building and because it was outside the scope of what the janitorial contract is. And in all honesty, the janitorial contract is pretty sweet because a lot of the times things are not happening in our facilities. And the janitorial staff is there and they're getting paid and there aren't a lot of activities there. So if one day we have an activity that requires a little more cleanup, I don't feel that we need to hire outside services. But in that conversation, the manager explained to me that perhaps those services are outside the scope of what the contract says. I mean, to me, litter pickup is litter pickup, whether it's in the building or in the parking lot or in the bathroom. I'm from the private sector, so I don't understand a lot of these things. But I think that when we revisit these contracts, especially since they're all going up, there really should be something where there's a little bit of leeway from them to us as well.
Yeah.
Because we're now charging our committees for pickup for these events. It comes out of their budget, which we give them, which means that the committees can do less because they have to pay for trash pickup and whatnot when we have staff at the center, at the community centers all the time. So I'd like to either take a look at what the scope of work is or maybe revisit it
We
when
will.
we renew the contracts,
We
just
will.
to see if we can
Yeah, some of the
alleviate some of
things,
that cost.
some of the things, for instance, with the health fair, it's a unique event because like you said, it's out in the parking lot and it's not so much the act of just picking up trash. It was SFM comes in, deploys certain things like portable trash cans and things of that nature that the Miami janitorial doesn't have the capacity to do. But we'll definitely take a look at all of those contracts and try and close some of those loops.
When we have events inside the community centers, like for example, the special needs resource fair was inside the community center. Did we hire anyone to? No, not if it's inside the building.
Correct. The times that we've had to use, for instance, we've had to use SFM for like that health fair that they deployed some portable trash cans and things of that nature for the parking lot because it was an outdoor event and we didn't have that capacity, or the janitorial crew didn't have that capacity. Also, we have had to enlist the help of the handyman. And I think we explained that one to you. The handyman, sometimes we've had to do it if an event is such that we don't have the resources at a facility to deploy, like if we need extra tables or chairs to be brought from a different facility, you know, the janitorial crew doesn't have that ability. That's not part of their scope to be able to move
Right, to
those
transport
right
that.
those things back and forth. That's where we enlist the help of the handyman and their services, and they obviously bill for that. Now the handyman,
But we do have pickup trucks that we have town,
yes.
we
Yeah.
just don't have the manpower.
Well, we have limited manpower, right? And they obviously have their regular job. But Jeremy, I would venture to say 98% of maybe higher, we use our staff as our park staff does the setup as well as the with the aid of the janitorial crew in all of these facilities.
Yeah, outside of extremely large events where you're moving, I think there was 50 plus tables. My staff and myself we'll be out there moving our own Sports Hall of Fame. We move chairs, tables ourselves using the 2 pickup trucks that we have they're town operated. We
Right.
try to stay within what we can, but there are certain events where it's not feasible, especially when we're bouncing sometimes tables from other reservations or rentals last minute to the health fair and so forth.
So if we can, just because some of the committee members have addressed this with me, if we can look through last year's expenses and see what are the specific events where we had to charge the committees for either hours or cleanup or something so that we can maybe specify, maybe it's like you said, maybe it's only a couple of events and they just happen to bring it up and I'm thinking that it's a bunch
Well,
and
we just
maybe
had
it's not.
the 4th of July, who handled the cleanup there.
Right,
It came
well,
out,
That's a
That's
massive.
SFM.
that's all SFM.
Yeah, they put the portable trash cans out throughout the park.
So janitorial still working their normal hours and going to the different pavilions and checking the normal garbage bins, but the extra garbage bins that we have to put out for the amount of volume of pedestrians and individuals in the park, that is handled by SFM.
And park staff as well helped out with that.
As far as the litter,
Or anything you had, yeah, for, the
park staff is usually there for setup, logistics and making sure that the operation is being run right.
Okay, so if it's, they handle pretty much everything. Okay.
As far as the refuse, yes.
Yeah, there's very few events that has to happen.
Okay.
And in addition, one thing that we have to note is that every committee that has, not every committee has, an event that is unique like that, right?
Correct.
Those committees that are, when they develop the budget for events for event X that happens to have that. When we develop the budget for it, in conjunction with the committee, we
Oh,
budget
no, I
for
know.
that.
No, I
So
know. I
if
just
they-
want to see if we can, if they could, because they're asking for increases in their budgets, right?
Right.
So if we can eliminate some of this, miscellaneous expenses that are charged to those budgets, then perhaps if we don't give them a budget increase, they'll still have a little bit more money if we can work around that. And like I said, maybe it's just a couple of events and it's
I
not,
don't think it's many, but we'll try and quantify how many they are out of the dozens and dozens of events that we put on. I venture to say it's very, very few, but we'll quantify that and you'll have that. We'll provide that to all of you.
thank you.
I just statement I want to say again, if I haven't said individually, thank you to the staff, Mr. Manager. I know this is an incredible feat to put a budget together and to walk us through it. And this is my first budget, workshops and meetings. And I just want to say that I feel prepared. Every time I have a question, the manager and the staff is always there. And I really want to thank you again, everybody, from the bottom of my heart. I know this is the most important thing we do, right? Our budget here, and you guys make it easy to make the choices. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that this is second to appointing a manager. This is the second most important thing that you do. So we understand that, and we don't want anybody. We definitely don't ever want to put any of you in a position where you feel or you are in a position to make decisions with not all of the resources and information that you need, right? We don't want any of you to be making uneducated decisions, right? So we want to provide you, and then if there's information that you don't need or don't want, so be it. But we want to have readily available anything that you want to help you make the most educated and best decision that you can with all of these matters.
Well, thank you very, very much. I know that this is Melissa's shining moment. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
She's dying for
Council-
October 1st
That's
to
it.
come
She needs a vacation now.
around.
Councilmember Dieguez, would you like to add anything?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Collazo. I
Councilmember
don't know.
Collazo, he's been very quiet.
I have been quiet, but I have been taking it all in and just again, I want to kind of say exactly what Councilman Ray Garcia said. The work that you guys put in and the explanation and kind of going through this entire process with the budget, allowing the residents, everybody to be super ultra transparent is very appreciated. So I thank you so much.
All right. So thank you. Big thank yous to everybody. And I believe that is all for this evening. So this meeting is adjourned.